Hi everyone, welcome to another short update on the progress of the as yet unnamed Spectrum Retro Game Tool project. This week I've been working on collision detection with the background tiles in a room. The previous collision update focused on collision between objects, including reaction to the collision in the logic system, which was used for transition between rooms. This update is more about the collision between objects and the background tiles in the room, which means it's possible to create background elements that limit movement, such as walls and platforms, etc. As with the object-to-object collisions, the initial method is very rudimentary, consisting only of basic bounding rectangle collision detection. The system will be enhanced to include other collision detection methods over time to give more accurate detection at the expense of processing time. So without further ado, I'll quickly demonstrate what I've changed and how it works. So I've got the game loaded, the standard demo game, and if we look at the start room, you'll see that I've added a few more tiles to create this very rough looking plant pot. Now I'll demonstrate firstly an export with things as they are. So this is basically all of these tiles have been marked as solid, which means objects cannot by default move through them. So if I do a quick export and show that in operation, then I can show you some of the other features. So from there, if I run make, and then hopefully run it in the emulator. I have noticed a few issues with the collision detection occasionally getting a bit caught up in itself. I'll investigate that, but hopefully it'll behave itself just for this demo. So now, as you can see, it's difficult to tell, but if I bounce against those walls, they're not letting me through. Similarly with the plant, if I hit the plant, it's not letting me through. Everything else works as normal. The collision with other objects, which is used for transition between rooms, still works, and we're able to move around with no longer moving through the walls and just disappearing off into infinity, which makes it a bit more interesting. You can see that the sprite, which the Manic Miner sprite, which is 16 by 16, doesn't let you get too close to the walls because of the bounding rectangle limitation at the moment. I will be putting something in to allow you to make the collision detection area more refined and accurate, but for now that seems to work. Now obviously what we don't want to be doing here really is have that plant blocking our way. It's a good background element, but it shouldn't be blocking our way. So if I just stop that and go back to the tool itself, I've introduced a new feature to the tile editor, which allows you to bring up some properties. This is an early way of doing it. It's a bit clunky and a bit ineffective or inefficient, and we'll be looking at different ways of making access to these flags and so on a little more effective. But basically you'll have a bunch of different flags that you can assign to each, or properties that you can assign to each tile. At the moment it's just solid, so if I turn off solid for all of the tiles that make up the plant pot, just takes a moment. As you can see, it's not efficient, and this is what I'd like to change. So any suggestions, more than welcome. But this is what we've got at the moment, and it does work theoretically. So now all of these objects will be marked as not collidable by objects within the scene. So if we do another export, the only difference should be that those tiles there will no longer block the movement of the player. Just takes a moment to build now. Hopefully. So collision with the walls still works because we didn't change the flags on those, but hopefully we can go straight through the plant pot, which allows you to place things in the scenery in the background as part of the room that are just pure scenery and offer no no interaction, no collision, and everything else works as normal. So this works for all objects. So if that bubble path was to take it into the walls, it would prevent it moving at the moment. I do need to add some flags in to allow individual objects to turn on and off collision with the walls or collision with the background elements. A little bit more fine-grained control at the object level as well as at the map level is on the cards. That's mainly the biggest change and the most important one, because it does move us a little bit further towards something that can actually be used to create a playable game. I have made a couple of other smaller changes in this release, or in this version. The other small update is to the room painting itself. You may have already noticed we've got this element down here now, and the palette itself has changed. Before, it had a background and foreground colour in here, which I felt got a little bit lost in amongst the palette, so I've moved it down here. And you've basically got two modes of painting when you're in the room editor. You're either painting with tiles or you're painting with attributes colour, and that is indicated by this section down here now. So at the moment, because we've got a tile selected, it shows that we're in tile painting mode, and it shows which tile we'll be painting with. If you select a colour, it changes to background and foreground ink and paper colour here, and you're now painting with the colours. And right button on here changes the background. So this left button paints with these two colours. It paints both at the same time and brightness. And right button removes any attribute from that cell, so it just goes back to default black and white. Now you'll notice it's difficult to see in there. If I move over here, if I change the background colour to black again and then paint, you'll notice even though the background colour is black, it marks those tiles on the map in the editor with a white border. The reason for this is if you've got attributes in these cells, they will be exported to the code. So if we have a look at the code that gets exported for that room, somewhere down here, you've got a whole bunch of attributes here, including ones that set this is the area that we've just painted, which sets the background to black and the foreground to whatever the foreground is. Now you can't see that normally, but it may be a useful feature in order to have areas of the room that change the colour of things as you move through them and so on. So I haven't disabled the ability to paint in space with a black background, but I've highlighted it so that if you do it by accident, for example, you're aware that you're exporting this extra set of attributes here, which will use up some of the memory, and then right click allows you just to remove them if you've done it by mistake. And if we go back to tile paint mode, then that all works. I think that's about it for this update. Please don't forget to like and subscribe to be kept informed of future update videos. I'm actively trying to implement the primary things that would be required to make it basically usable to experiment with. And while I'm not under any illusion that a game could be created with the system as it stands, with each new feature it gets a bit closer to usable. The plan is to get ready for a closed alpha in the next month or so. So if anyone's interested in taking part in that alpha, do let me know. Drop me a message in the comments below. And one more thing before I go, I have set up a Ko-fi page for anyone who wants to support this project, and that's probably where I'll be setting up and enabling people on the alpha program. If you're interested, I'll drop a link in the description below for anyone who wants to support the project. Thanks, and see you next time.